All right, we're going to get started. Thanks so much. And Alicia, do you want to get us rolling?
Absolutely. And Tim, if you can open the chat to everyone, it looks like it's mostly coming to hosts and panelists for some reason. You want to play around with that, like kick us off?
Sure.
We'll try, everyone. No promises. Sorry. But welcome. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to our first US and Canada B Corp Marketers Network webinar of the year. We are so excited for today's talk about sustainable marketing. Happy B Corp also, everyone. If you did not notice, we are recording this chat for later. We are very excited, so we're just going to get going. Tim, go ahead and move on to the next slide here. So we will be introducing our panelists here shortly. Then they're going to be doing an incredible discussion on sustainable marketing and the book that they've recently come out with. We're going to have some time for Q&A after that, so feel free to drop your questions in the chat as we go through. Even if we can't fix the chat, Tim and I will still see them and record them for the Q&A session later. And then after that, we'll be talking about how as a community we can come together to create more collective impact in this space. Next slide. If you are unfamiliar with us, the B-Lab US and Canada Marketers Network works to create collective impact to help marketers create more ethical and responsible campaigns and drive partnership opportunities between B Corps. We put on these types of webinars throughout the year, as well as our participants and hosts an additional B-Lab initiatives to grow and sustain our impact as a B Corp collective. And with that, I will pass back to Tim to introduce our panelists.
All right, thanks so much. Really appreciate that. I am so excited to get this this discussion going with me with us today. We have Alexis Iyer or Ayre?
Like Jane Eyre.
Jane Eyre.
Or the air that we breathe. Just saying the air that we breathe is probably easy.
And Paul Randall, thanks so much for joining us. I loved your book. It is one of the best books that I've read on the topic in a really, really long time. And so I'm really excited to hear you talk about it. The book is called Sustainable Marketing, the Industry's Role in a Sustainable Future. I know that you have some slides, so to that effect, I'm going to stop sharing myself so that you can share. And feel free, Paul or Alexis, whoever is going to share your slides to go ahead and get rolling with that.
I'll pull them up, Alexis, if you want to say hi. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for coming to see us. Hopefully, we're just going to do a quick 15-minute presentation, which kind of sets the scene of our thinking behind the book. It's just really to get thoughts going before we go into sort of chat time, I suppose, Q&A time. But hopefully we'll do that. But if you've got any questions, just drop them in the chat as we go through. We'll probably answer them at the end, just because we only have 15 minutes to do this. But then I'm sure we'll run through questions afterwards. So yes. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. And Paul, why don't you start?
Sure. Okay. So hello, everybody. I'm Paul Randall, and thank you so much for joining, and Tim and the team for inviting us to be here. We've got 15 minutes, so we're going to dive in quite quick and dive in quite provocatively with two statements. Sustainability marketing is dead. Long live sustainable marketing. So what might we mean by that, and why would we start that with a B Corp conversation? Well, we've been working in this space for quite a while now. We're both career marketeers with over 50 years in the game, but in the latter part of our years have been very much focused on sustainability in marketing. And we believe that we're coming out of marketing's first foray into the sustainability world, one where marketing as a community, as an industry, looked at the topic of sustainability, assumed it was yet another trend, that it would just market in the way it traditionally always had done. So it picked up the topic of sustainability, had no expertise, didn't understand it, started trying to sell it in the way that it sold everything else, and to be perfectly honest, made a holy mess of it. We greenwashed like mad. We charged premium prices for things that were trying to be sustainable, and the sustainable pound, the sustainable dollar, arguably didn't materialize. And all of a sudden, we've all gone very quiet as we start green hushing. And that's a kind of sense of where we are in the big kind of marketing industry at the moment. And we believe passionately that actually that's because marketing as an industry and as a discipline approach sustainability wrong. And that's at the core foundation of our book. And we're advocates of sustainable marketing. We're advocates of building the knowledge, building the expertise on sustainability in marketing, turning the sustainability lens on marketing itself, which Alexis will go on to talk about, and then bringing marketing to the table of sustainability in the spirit of partnership and help. And a lot of that we build out in our book. And we're going to rattle through some of the key thoughts from that in this session. So that's bringing you to the table. We're not about telling you how to market sustainability products in a traditional way. That doesn't work. We need a wholly new way to do it. So, Alexis, why is that the case?
Okay, so first of all, when we were actually looking into this, we thought actually the one thing that marketing does a lot is we have ROIs, we have click-through rates, everything is focused on commercial impacts. And we have little regard for societal and environmental impacts, for everything that we do. Yes, we have campaigns that might be trying to drive environmental impact or societal impact, but we actually don't put the sustainability lens over the entirety of marketing. So that's exactly what we did. We picked up the UN SDG framework and we placed it straight over the top of marketing and looked at it through this new sustainability lens. And it was actually quite horrifying, actually, what we found. And we really dig into this in the book. But if you go on to the next slide, Paul. What we've done for this one, and we're only going to pick out one example for this, but this just shows, a number of different examples. But basically, we thought, okay, fine. If we look at it in this new light, if we look back at the 4 Ps, which came out in the 1950s, which was the original sort of marketing of today, which everyone still focuses on 70 years later, what does that actually look like when you put the UN SDG framework over the top of it? And suddenly you've got product shifts to dynamic obsolescence. It's not driving the needs of customers, it's driving this absolute must make as much as we physically can, grow, no thought about what happens really to the product at the end of life. I mean, I know there are companies who are starting to, but the general thing is, once the customer's bought it, it's not our problem anymore, which is why our landfills are filling up. Price has caused a huge amount of debt. There's a huge amount of bias in the way that pricing strategies are geared up, and there's a huge amount of profiteering around it, especially what Paul was saying around the sustainable pound. Then in place, how we actually market it or where we actually do our marketing drives a huge amount of carbon emissions. There's a huge amount of waste, and again, a huge amount of bias in the way that we do this. And then if you look at promotion through all of this lens, we've got brain print, which is the emotive impact that every single marketing touch point or brand touch point customers are in touch with. What's the overarching effect of all of those touch points from all those brands having on the way that we see the world? As we know, that marketing is one of the biggest cultural levers. Think of how we propose to someone with a rock. That wasn't actually an old tradition. That was actually De Beers trying to find a way to make diamonds seem lasting, seem forever, seen as a sign for one of the biggest things that happens in a lot of people's lives. And then you think about Santa turning red, or Father Christmas, however you call him, turning red. That was Coca-Cola, nothing to do with the fact that he was actually originally dressed in green, the original Saint Nicholas. So that sort of brain print, and actually the effect that's having, again, bias sits within promotion, and then there's a huge amount of fraud that sits within it. So to give you just a quick context, I would just pull out one example from each, but we've got obviously got this entire slide with loads of examples, and the book goes into this in a lot more detail, but actually sees it by the individual SDGs. We've reframed it just for this, to look at it through the 4 Ps lens, but actually we look at it through the entire SDGs in the book. An example of product is Fast fashion, originally back in the 1950s, you had 4 seasons. You know, obviously you wouldn't be wearing vests in the winter and vice versa. So it made sense to have different seasons. Actually, I think they even started with 2 seasons. It was kind of like just a summer and winter and a slightly lighter version in between. And as you've noticed through the decades, it's got more and more ridiculous as marketing's become a lot more effective in the way it's done it. And then it went from seasonal to weekly. And now we're sitting at daily. And you know, and Shein is launching up to 10,000 new products every single day at the moment, 2 to 10,000 products, which is just through the roof, which is driving this churn of just more and more clothing, people paying less respect for their clothing, using it a lot less. And you know, the similar trends is in paint decoration, which Paul used to work for Axel Nobel, so as a paint fanatic, I say paint fanatic, he knows a lot about paint.
Okay, thank you for the qualification there. Yeah,
really sounds like. Anyway, and then pricing. The sort of marketing machine absolutely gears up to Christmas. It's the biggest marketing bonanza of the year, probably apart from Black Friday, I'd say. And in 2022, because marketing puts out a huge amount around, gotta just like keep buying for the perfect Christmas. You're not a good parent if you haven't bought X number of presents for your child, or you haven't bought something this big for your husband, or whatever else. It actually meant that 54% of individuals spent more than they could afford on presents in 2022. And because of that, there was more debt. And actually, suicide charities, particularly in the UK, because that was just very focused on this particular stat, there was a 29% increase in risk of suicide amongst people in the month after Christmas, as they realised how much money they'd spent, which is just appalling, the lack of contextual care by marketing around that. Then you've got place, just a thing linked to the USA, I suppose. So it's very relatable to the audience we have here today. The entire global exhibition industry actually emits more carbon emissions than the entirety of the USA. So think about all the conferences and exhibitions that go on around the world, and it just starts to see, and that's not even talking about the waste that comes out of it. I think it's something like 5 or 6 kilograms of waste is produced per person per day, per attendee per day at an average conference. So that is how much is just thrown out. And then when we're sitting at promotion, we've got, well, this is a societal one. There's a wonderful, well, there's a repeated every single year. The Gina Davis Institute does this scan over the Cannes Lion Award entries, of which there are thousands upon thousands, and they have this algorithm that kicks in, and it looks at how females are depicted in advertising. And this is just one example they put out. Their reports are absolutely amazing, worth looking up. But females are 4 times more likely to be shown in revealing clothing, and that still happens today, despite all the diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff going on. We still see so much around that. Anyway, over to you, Paul.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alexis. So what you've seen there is a rattle through, and as we say, we interrogate that in a lot more detail in the book. If there's one stat that we think lands this message the clearest, it's one that's come out of an organization in the UK called the Purpose Disruptors. What they did was they took a ad to sale attribution methodology. So I placed that ad, it sold that product, and so established ways of doing that in the industry. But then they looked at the carbon footprint of those products that were being sold and created the concept of advertised emissions. So that ad created that footprint through the product or service that it sold. And what it found in the UK is that advertising contributes 32% of the carbon footprint of each and every individual. And I think that stat sits right at the heart of my belief that marketing is hugely complicit in the challenges we face from a sustainable lifestyle point of view. And that's why we need to address it. And it was part of that sort of insight that led Alexis and I to do our work. And you can look at things like the 4 Ps, and you can look at things, all the technologies we use and all the tactics we use in marketing. And you can tweak them, you can change them, you can add another P, you can add you know, people, you can add passion, you can add a whole bunch of different P's, but it never actually solves the problem. It just tweaks it. It just makes things marginally better. You know, to actually understand why marketing is behaving this way, we had to go back to the first principles. Why was marketing, you know, why has marketing become the $740 billion industry that it is? What role does it play in commerce? What role does it play in society? And if you go back to those 1950s and 1960s, you can find the origins of the 4 Ps that were written by Jerome McCarthy. And he explains very eloquently in a brilliant book the role of marketing. And at that point in time, our economic model, our capitalist model, was being laid down. And what it said was we would improve our health and well-being in society by allowing us to buy goods and services that improved our lives. And sounds great, but they had, the economists of the time had 2 assumptions. They assumed that the individual was rational, and they assumed that the individual had perfect knowledge. I mean, at that point in time, they talked about rational man with perfect knowledge. And, you know, advertisers, marketers, even at that point in time, looked at that and kind of went, that's a bit daft. We're not rational humans and we don't have perfect knowledge. But you know what? We're quite good at solving that problem. So actually, marketing became a core engine within our economic model. With that, take marketing out of our economic model and it doesn't work. So marketing slotted into that new economic model as the engine of growth. Its mission was to kind of delight the customer in a way that was profitable for the organization. And it means all our toolkit, all our methodology, everything we do is in pursuit of a commercial target and performance. That is our toolkit. That is the way we think. It's the way we're educated and brought up to believe that marketing operates. And you can quite quickly see in a sustainable world, in B Corp, you'll be thinking about your environmental impacts, your societal impacts, and your commercial performance. If you're looking to marketing to help you to do that, and it can only do one thing, it's never going to be there to fully help you. Ladder onto that its own poor behaviors and its own impacts, as Alexis just touched on. And marketing is an anchor on sustainable transition and doesn't help companies move forward. It doesn't help change society. So what we suggested in our book is, well, how do we repurpose it? Because guess what? If we move into a new sustainable world with new economic models like donut economics or whatever they turn out to be, you're still going to have irrational humans with imperfect knowledge. So our skill set as marketeers and our ability to change behaviors, our ability to kind of understand emotion, our ability to kind of communicate right message, right time, right people, that's still valuable in a sustainable world. But we've got to give ourselves a new reason for doing it, which is what we suggest in the book. So we say that marketing has this ability to help us move to a regenerative state or to a sustainable future by actually repurposing it. And that the purpose of marketing, as it says on the slide there, is that marketing should exist to make the most optimal contribution possible to the long-term well-being of all people and planet. And if it gives itself that mission at the overarching state, it has 3 pillars that needs to sit on. Firstly, from an environmental point of view, marketing has to protect the environment and aid its restoration through responsible consumption, production, and genuine respect for the value that it delivers. From a societal point of view, and we've already talked on some of the places where it's failing in this respect, it needs to help humans fulfill their potential in dignity, equality, and in a healthy world. And we still have commerce. We're not walking away from commerce at all. You know, marketing's mission is to actually work with the citizen. Let's forget the phrase consumer and those sorts of things. Work with the citizen, partner with the citizen to shape new behaviors that support our economic models. So we're profitable, we're successful, but we're doing a way that's balanced with our societal and our environmental targets. What that means for the marketeer is actually really exciting, because rather than being that kind of growth engineer in the business, you know, that one person that's pushing in the wrong direction, actually they become a conductor of performance across these three pillars, understanding the levers they can pull in a business that helps hit an environmental target or a societal target whilst balancing out the commerciality of the organization at the same time. So we envisage that as the new role for marketing. And in the book, we'll show it in a bit as well, we go on to not only give this grand idea, but actually propose a toolkit called the Sustainable Marketing Compass that helps you implement that. So that's kind of where we are. I don't know, do you want to pick up now, Alexis, or?
Yeah. Yes, yeah, I can pick up.
Yeah.
So what does that really mean? I mean, I think the main thing for 2024, and this is what we're actually seeing with a lot of clients at the moment, is if you embed sustainable marketing properly into your market, if you embed sustainability properly into your marketing, so you have sustainable marketing techniques, then actually there are three major benefits from it. First one is compliance. There is so much legislation coming down the track. There is a huge one later this year for EU directive, which is really hotting up on sustainability claims and everything that sits around the way you market your products. So actually it sort of future-proofs you for compliance coming down the track, and I suppose keeps you ahead of the legislation in many respects. Competitiveness at the moment, it can, you know, our clients have definitely seen the competitive edge it kicks in hugely, and I think that'll be around for quite a while as businesses start to pick up in this space. And I think also the behaviors aspect, it's really starting to help drive new behaviors for customers, which I think is going to really help in terms of Scope 3 emissions. As the IPCC said, if we actually manage to harness customer behavior, we'd see an instant global reduction of 5% in global emissions overnight if we could harness sustainable behavior. So actually, marketing is going to have to become a huge, powerful weapon, actually, in many respects, for the sustainability teams, because if they can suddenly start helping the sustainability teams with reducing Scope 3 emissions through driving better behavior, then actually they're, you know, back to the previous slide around their role, it's not actually just about driving commercial thing. You're starting to think about the environmental aspect, environmental and societal aspects of what your business is actually trying to do in the bigger picture. Next slide. So this is where our framework was born, the Sustainable Marketing Compass, and it doesn't offer all the answers. You know, there's still a lot of unanswered answers because, you know, there's so many things that are evolving in this space. But the real focus of this was when we did the research into all this, we noticed there were loads of pockets of amazing work going on, but there was nothing that actually brought it all together into one overarching framework that someone could literally pick up. Someone didn't have to do 2 years of research like we did, because we know that most people don't have that amount of time. So it's basically a framework that guides the marketing team how to embed sustainability into their marketing. It helps embed the you know, sustainability into the core of marketing, and this could be either ideally through using the UN SDG framework, but, you know, not everyone has that. And so actually it could be aligning with your company's sustainability. Well, it definitely will be aligning with your company's sustainability objectives, but if you don't have those, it has the UN SDG framework is a great place to start. And it offers a lot of advice on kind of tools and guidance that are already out there, you know, and sort of bringing those all into one place. And it basically starts from the center, which is all around embedding sustainability. Then it's around the strategic foundations. So what are the core foundations you need to sort out to have absolutely embedded before you even start thinking about tactics and how you're going out to the market? What are the core things you really need to think about? And then the next one out there is around the tactics, and then basically saying that you must test everything. You know, what kind of governance structure do you have in place? That basically means that you're testing everything before it goes out to check that whatever you're putting out, it might have a positive environmental impact, but you're not having a negative societal impact as well. So it's ensuring that you're not going to suddenly find out 2 months down the line that you're actually having a worse effect in another area. And then the ultimate thing is that everything is pinned together by data. core data. And actually the Sustainable Marketing Compass, it's amazing. When we brought this framework out, it's open sourced, everyone can use it. We want to see it. Tim did the most amazing riff of it and reframed it in terms of digital marketing, which was so wonderful to see someone literally pick the framework up and then use it in their own context. So that is absolutely the aim for it. It is completely open source, and it's already being used in many education places already, including Cambridge University, the Chartered Institute of Marketing, the Marketing Society, MIT. They're all now using it in their courses. So it is picking up speed, and we're really thrilled, and we're having so much feedback about it. And we're you know, the more people that come to the table, the better on this, and the collaboration is absolutely key. Because it was very much a first version when we brought it out, and actually as Tim has gone through it, you know, it's really interesting talking to him about how he used it and the amazing blog post he wrote about it. Over to you, Paul.
I think that's us. That's our
Sorry.
Trying to squeeze. Let me stop sharing. Trying to squeeze the full book into 15 minutes. It's quite a challenge. So hopefully
You did an amazing job.
Thank you, Tim. Hopefully we've given you a bit of a sense of what it is. But that's, if we want to open up for questions, that would be brilliant.
Sure. Yeah, we have a bunch of questions. I think the first question that I want to ask, and we'll get to those as we go, and please put them in the chat or the Q&A, is, you know, you're talking about a wholesale fundamental mindset shift. How do you get skeptics on board, or how do you kind of, you know, in a really urgent time space, like what do you do?
Do you want to go, Paul? You look like you're right on the edge of answering.
Really good question. Yeah. I like that. I like that one. There's kind of three camps of marketing here, I think. There's those such as yourself, Tim, get it. You know, I know, you know, your response to the book was brilliant, and we kind of have this phrase about those who had the light bulb turned on. And they're growing in number every day. You know, Alexis and I work on the Cambridge University course. So we see hundreds of students all the while coming through, having the light bulb turned on. We get approached all the while on LinkedIn. I'm feeling worried about what I'm doing. I'm feeling complicit in the problems. What can I do to change? So I think there's a growing community. From when we did our first Cambridge course years ago now, we were kind of 2 of maybe 6 marketeers on a cohort of over 400. Now Cambridge has dedicated courses to this. So it's growing and growing at a pace. The second community are those ripe for the light bulb to be turned on. When we do our capability and training sessions in agencies or in clients, we take them on quite a rough roller coaster. and then the light bulb's very quickly turned on. You know, some of these things like the 4 Ps we showed you there horrify individuals, and they don't realize that they're having that impact. You know, marketeers are lovely people. We don't want to be evil. We are genuinely nice, empathetic individuals, but we're in a machine that's broken. When you expose that machine to those individuals, they want to change. So that's probably the big percentage of the audience out there. Then there's those, you know, that still run agencies that kind of help sell oil and gas, and those individuals that aren't in the camp. And to be honest, I don't think we're going to change them. You know, but the focus is on those we can change, and on those that, you know, are on the journey as well. You know, just ring fence those we can't, know they're there, work our way around them.
Alexis, did you want to add anything to that? I see you smiling.
Sorry, Paul just paused there. I think you lost your internet slightly, and you pulled a fantastic face. Sorry. No, I'm completely with Paul on that. I mean, we're never going to get everyone. And actually, the wonderful thing is that people who don't even have the light bulb on, but are starting to work out that actually the stakes are getting too high, we still welcome them on board, even if it's not driven from a personal perspective, because quite often they'll end up in that personal perspective where they do start to change, but sometimes it is driven by actually the core needs to change, and that's often driven by legislation or something like that coming down the track. So that's all right. Like how people enter into it
Right.
doesn't bother us.
Great. Alicia, do you want to share another question?
Yeah, I think this is probably a good follow-up question to that topic, which is, as marketers, we know changing human behavior is difficult and can take years. So suggestions to how to set expectation and help with our leaders who've always been solely focused on the conversation about profit and growth.
Your turn.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think this is where, again, I think, the changing behavior, again, it's looking through a traditional marketing mindset as well with all the stuff that we've used traditionally. I think what we've really sort of started undigging was actually there are many other ways that you can come around behavior change. And there's this wonderful report that says if you want to drive social impact, you need to get 23% people on board. And we talk about this sort of in more detail, as I said in the book, but it's just, it's thinking down those different lines. And actually, if you start thinking at a much more community level, and thinking in those much smaller pockets rather than this sort of blanket approach that's often put out there, you can start to see a driving change. And I think that comes with the kind of value proposition you put across as well. Rethinking your value proposition will start to drive behavior change in a very different way. So I think again, yes, it is really difficult, and I don't deny that. But I think also we are looking at it from an old lens. We're not looking at it from a different lens. And I think if we start looking at it through a different lens, I think changes will start to happen, but they will come in a very different perspective. And I think one of the other fundamental things around that is that, ever since the 1960s, as Paul was describing, we see people as consumers. We see them as consumers. We refer to them as consumers. It's like we just don't do anything else with our lives apart from consume stuff, which is, I mean, to some extent, seeing how much shopping some people do, it could well be correct that all they do is consume. But a lot, most people have, a lot of other things they do. They like going out for a run. They like, going off and seeing friends. That's not consuming. And I think there's a wonderful book called Citizens by John Alexander, and it's absolutely brilliant. And it's saying we've got to stop thinking of people as consumers. We've got to start thinking as citizens. They are people, they are functioning, they don't just consume stuff. And actually, again, once you start reframing, like shifting that entire 70 years of marketing away from the consumer mindset, starting to think about these are citizens, and actually how can we form partnerships with them? How can we rethink a value proposition that generally is useful to them, then actually I do think behavior change will be a lot easier, because we're actually widening the net massively on how we perceive the people we're interacting with.
Yeah, I think you're this is really great. And in the US and Canada, we have Be Local groups, which are kind of, focused specifically on what you're talking about, like making those small conversations and having those small, making change in small doses, so to speak. And I'm not sure if you have those over in the UK as well, but I think you do. No?
Not sure. Not described that way. No.
Yeah, these are like regional communities of B Corps. Alicia and I have been part of those groups, and they help. They really help with the process that you're talking about. All right, I know we got a lot more questions, so Alicia, go ahead and roll another one out at us.
I just want to add one more into that one, actually.
Oh, sure.
Before we jump on, is one of the mistakes in sustainability marketing was around behavioral change, was that it was all about raising awareness and approaching marketing of it through that one element of comms. And actually, as marketeers, we have a lot more tools around capacity to change, not just motivation for change. We have choice architecture through the products and the services we actually offer. We have, we can drive behaviors through the place and the location and how we facilitate that. We can drive a lot of behavior through price and the way that we actually use price. So I think, this is where that skill set of a marketeer can really come to its fore when it views its full toolkit. I think that one of the problems it's had is it's just the messaging exercise. And as a consequence of that, it's failed dismally.
Yeah, definitely agree. Alicia, do you have another question in queue?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you share examples of any companies or brands who are leading the way in sustainable marketing? Who is currently doing this right, and how are they being successful?
Or can I do my Tony's bit? So conscious this is a US audience. I don't know how many of you will have heard of Tony's Chocolate Only.
Oh yeah, another B
perhaps-
Corp.
the B Corp. They are phenomenal. For those that haven't, their founder, based out of Amsterdam in the Netherlands, when he was founding the company, went into a grocery store, bought a bar of chocolate, and then tried to get himself arrested for aiding and abetting the slave labor industry, the child slave labor industry, and the cocoa industry. And the only reason that Tony's exists is to take children out of slave labor conditions in the cocoa industry. And what is brilliant about the way they do their marketing is that they threw away the toolkit and actually approached it completely uniquely. So it's only very recently they've ever done any advertising at all, and they've gone from nothing to being 20% of the market in some parts of Europe now without any advertising, just being genuinely disruptive in what they do. And they do that by genuinely manifesting their purpose at the heart of everything. So you buy your bar of Tony's Chocolate Only, and rather than being uniform squares or rectangles like a traditional bar of chocolate, they're all different sizes. It's all higgledy-piggledy. And the whole point is life's not fair. And when they launched in the UK, the wrappers were blank, and they were an open invitation for you to write back to them about your thoughts about children being involved in the slave labor industry. When they do an advent calendar, which is really famous now across Europe, caused a lot of controversy at first, because you got to, I think it was the 12th of December, and my daughter was there, and she opened her little kind of window on the 12th of December, and it's empty. And it's done deliberately to highlight the fact that there's children that have picked the chocolate that she's eating that have never tasted chocolate in their lives. So it's an educational method as well as actually programmed out. And everything that Tony's does ladders up to driving education, creating revenue through the chocolate to distribute back through the supply chain via blockchain back into the farms, bring the wealth up in the farms, take children out of those conditions. But they make it really clear and ultra compelling in everything they do. Even to the point of POS, when they were launching in one of the main grocery stores, they deliberately had POS points in the middle of the aisleway. So you had to walk around, you had to get your trolley and navigate your way with everybody else in the store around them, because they were being deliberately disruptive in that. So brilliant marketing, but just taking the rule book and saying, man, we're not going to behave like a confectionery company. We're going to behave like a purpose-led company. And they're one of our favorites. I don't know if anybody else has got any other examples.
Well, I know we have a lot of questions, so I think go ahead, Alicia, and drop another one.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that we need something like a Hippocratic oath for marketing? And if so, what might that sound like?
He's enthusiastic. He's like,
yes. It's such a good idea. I mean, a lot of the inputs we took into the book came from deliberately going outside of the industry. So you look at the healthcare industry, you look at your GP, they have a duty of care. They have this concept of contextual care. If you have to go into the doctors for any reason, before you get your pill, before you get your prescription, or you get your bandage, whatever it is that's happened, they'll do a complete kind of audit of who you are, where you've come from, what the relationship's like, where are you from an affluence point of view in society, all these contextual inputs before you get any sort of test, before you get any sort of treatment plan or something of that nature. And we think that something like that is actually missing from marketeers. Where's our duty of care to those people that we're actually selling to? How can I sell a sugary drink to you if you're diabetic? What right do I actually have to do that? And shouldn't we be adopting a duty of care to those people that we're trying to derive value from, isn't that a fair exchange? So I think we absolutely need something like that. I think we've lost Alexis.
She said she just had to step out for one quick second, and she'll be right back. So in the meantime, we've got a lot of questions, which is great. This is really awesome that we're getting so many questions from the audience. Alicia, go ahead, feel free to fire another one, and we'll just barrage Paul until he's bored of talking.
Absolutely. As B Corps, a lot of us here are B Corp certified, interested, or at least values-driven organizations. But we find that marketing and finding values-driven companies can be quite difficult. What do you suggest for these companies on how they can market their product or services and the transparent values that impact them to make it searchable and findable for our citizens?
Could you, I didn't get quite the start of it. Sorry, you broke up a little bit. Could you just quickly reframe that again? Sorry.
Absolutely. How do we, as values-driven and B Corp organizations, make ourselves findable to these citizens looking for our products and services, interested in purchasing and working with organizations who do their work sustainably?
Right. Okay. Yes. So, I think, one of the challenges the B Corp community's got is you've got lots of big traditional organizations with huge marketing horsepower. I think, that's a big challenge. At the same time, there's a whole bunch of constraints in those worlds that if you're alert to, you can actually work around. So there's a great bit of research done by McKinsey about, the core of the marketing and advertising world being stuck on tram lines. And it's like, we have a website, we have social media, we have data, we have SEO. And it's like everybody does exactly the same thing. And if everybody's doing exactly the same thing, then the ability to cut through is massively undermined. And actually, if you behave like a Tony's or something like that and deliberately step off the tram lines, then you give yourself a whole new world to explore in how you go to market. And we at some of the workshops we do this deliberately to kind of stimulate people in unusual ways. So we ask people to write a brief through the language of yoga, for example, or anything that kind of a trick to break you away from those tram lines that you're actually stuck on. I'll give one example of excuse me, a company in the UK, a personal friend of mine, passionate about local radio, wanted to create the biggest local radio station in our county, and went to an advertising agency, was given budgets for kind of SEO and PPC and all that sort of stuff to create a buzz. And he went, I'm not doing that. And he said, I'm going to give myself a challenge of making my marketing a revenue stream. And what he did was he went and bought a trailer. He then went and spoke to all the organisers of the local country fairs and school festivals and stuff like that, which we have lots of in the UK. And basically said, look, pay me £500 an event. I'll come and be your MC and I'll deliver all the music for the day. So basically he got paid to turn up and be his little radio station in all the county events. And now he's got the largest radio station in that county, and they paid him to do it.
That's amazing.
So I think it's about being genuine, and this is what marketers are good at, right? Innovation and creativity. It's about taking all that innovation, all that ingenuity you're pouring into your B Corp, but doing the same with your marketing, not subscribing necessarily to those tram lines that the industry gives you.
Right. I think we have time for just one or two more questions, and then we have some announcements at the end, and then we gotta roll out. Alicia, do you want to drop another one in?
Yeah, absolutely. How can companies and brands who are not currently sustainable but want to begin this journey into sustainable marketing tactics, how do they get started?
The first thing is your marketing team needs to be best friends with your sustainability experts. You absolutely need to be, fully understanding of each other's objectives, fully understanding of each other talks, first and foremost, because just taking, stats from sustainability world and broadcasting them incorrectly is the way of greenwashing and the way of fines and things of that nature. So sit down, understand, really get to know, educate yourself, understand what these topics actually are. Then a couple of things we'd recommend from the compass. The north on the compass is something we call redefine success. What that asks you to do is identify your commercial, societal, and environmental targets, bring them all onto the table, often for the first time in the organization. Then understand the connectivity between them. What connects my commercial impacts and my societal impacts? What connects my commercial and my environmental? What connects the societal and environmental? Understand that causality. And from that insight, identify what does success now actually look like for me, and then take that into an exercise where you look at what's the value I'm delivering. I want to drive societal value or environmental value. How does that value manifest itself to help me deliver against what redefines success looks like? And there's, in the book, it tells you how to go through those steps, but it reframes a lot of the time your role for comms. And it gives you completely different reason to go to market and how we go to market and what you're asking your audiences and those individuals you're engaging with to do. So, just even those first two starting points are a good place to go.
Just one more on top of that, actually, is like actually having education really sits in that, and everyone always thinks, well, marketing teams need to educate themselves in sustainability, but it's really useful to get a sustainability team that actually understands marketing. It sounds really obvious, but actually what we've started doing is actually training sustainability teams in marketing so that they understand how they can become their allies. Because at the moment, a lot of people think outside marketing that marketing is just a comms machine or an advertising machine. They don't even think actually at the comms level it's the whole way down just to an advertising machine. And actually, if they understand the much wider role, actually, that it's much easier for them to understand how marketing can help them achieve their sustainability objectives. And I think it's actually, and it also means that you'll get to a place where you have this common language between both parties moving forwards. It's much easier to work together.
Yeah, sure. Alicia, let's do one more, and then we still have time, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. How does growth fit into this framework? So how does a business define when to focus on growth-driven activities or when to prioritize other activities?
What we say is actually to set yourselves targets. But this is where these KPIs come into this. Is actually redefining what their success is and what are those performance metrics that sit against those success pillars. And actually, if you're actually constantly looking back, of which marketers are very good at, we're always looking at our metrics all the time, on a daily, weekly, whatever basis. It's exactly the same analysis needs to be, or the habits need to be added, be used in this context. But it's actually saying, if you're seeing, growth going through the roof, but you're seeing environmental societal start to be negatively impacted for whatever reason, then actually it's like drawing back on growth a bit and actually focusing more on your environmental and societal aspects. So a prime example of this is actually someone mentioned actually in chat the Patagonia as a company, and a prime example of what they've done here is they've just said, don't buy this jacket, which is the famous ad that everyone always brings up, but it's that context. It's exactly what we mean by that, is they're like, if you already have a jacket, don't buy another one, because actually you don't need another one, and focus more on repair and secondhand, and so that's where they were starting to think about the more environmental impacts and starting to drive more focus on the environmental aspect of it. And I think that's where you need to know, but you need to have those metrics in place so you know where you're pushing on each of those pillars, so that so it can keep you focusing on all three rather than just reverting back to growth again, because that's what we've been prone to do for 70 years.
Paul, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's right. I think, you as B Corps, you want growth to scale your impact. So you're going to have growth targets. You're also going to have impact targets, but exactly as Alexis is saying, don't divorce them. They're interdependent on each other. So equipping yourself with that flight deck of the Enterprise, so you know exactly what levers you're pulling to kind of make sure that your growth is appropriate to what your purpose is and how it supports your purpose.
That's great. Well, thank you both so much. I can't tell you how much we appreciate you being here and sharing your wisdom, and definitely recommend to everybody on this call to go and consider getting a copy of their book, because it's amazing and super smart. We do have a couple quick little announcements. Going back, Alicia, you can see that, right?
Yes.
So we have a couple upcoming webinars. We don't have specific dates for them yet. We're still working on that. One in May, we're going to, B-Lab has done another brand awareness study. And that will, I think they're doing an event in early May, and we'll be doing a follow-up event on how specifically this can help B Corp marketers in late May. We're going to do an event in June around responsible tech advocacy. If you are a B Corp listening to this webinar, please join us in the B Corp, in the Beehive, or the US Canada B Corp Marketers Group, Marketers Network. Otherwise, if you're not a B Corp and you're just attending this, you can sign up for emails to get announcements about events like this one and others at usca.bcorporation.net. And that's it. Thanks so much, Paul and Alexis and Alicia, for fielding questions and all that, and really appreciate your wisdom.
And thank you, Tim. We love the support you've offered the Compass, and your articulation of it was fantastic.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate that. That means a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much, really, and thanks all for joining us.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
And
Thank
do
you.
get in touch with us if you on LinkedIn, if you have any further questions that you want answered, and on those lines, we'd love to hear from you. And of course, like Tim, if you start riffing with it, we want to hear about it. If you start riffing with the Compass, we want to know how you're doing, because it's just so great to get that feedback.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.